Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Myself, Namrita, Director of XN India. I have a total of 9 years experience, out of which I'm proud to be with XN for last 7.5 years. I'm sure many would already know XN, but to give you a short brief to who we are, XN was originally established in 1984 as a foundation by the Ministry of Economic Affairs in the Netherlands. In the past 3 decades, Exim has gone on to create a number of IT standards. The most notable of these include ITL and Prince2. Currently, Exim focuses on responding to market trends with certifications such as DevOps, Agile Scrum, Information Security, SIAM, VeriSM, Blockchain, AI, and many more. Today with us, we have our growing partner ConsultDesk, having its presence in Canada and India. Mr. Alan, founder of ConsultDesk, has been very kind to join us today in this session as well. I would like to introduce our speaker and presenter, Mr. Atul Anand. He has an experience of 14 years in leading digital transformation and IT service management teams in different MNCs. He keeps a passion of blogging as well, and Exin has published few of the articles he has wrote in the past. He is one of the first in India to be awarded as DTO, Digital Transformation Officer badge, and we will have him share his experience through this later as we go. Last but not the least, we would love to hear your questions and feedback. So please feel free to type your questions as you think across, and we'll pick it up in the end for sure. With that said, I would like to welcome our speaker and presenter, Mr. Atul, to start the presentation. Over to you, Atul.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Namrata, for this kind presentation or kind introduction. So you missed out one thing, and I thought I'll introduce one point that
Sure.
I am a trained yoga professional as well, and I always believe in spending time whenever I have to contribute back to society or to contribute back to people in whatsoever form. So that I always proudly boast to say. So I just thought I'll again say that. So now let's come to the agenda for today. So we will be talking about digital transformation, what is it all about, why it is inevitable. We'll focus on why now the focus is shifting on everything as a service. So that would be the second point of discussion. After that, we'll talk about VeriSM. How is it in terms of the approach, overall umbrella approach, and the mindset which is being used by various organizations across the world to transform themselves digitally. And then subsequently, we'll talk about VeriSM model and management mesh. So management mesh is the core, and that's the heart of VeriSM model. So we'll spend some time specifically on management mesh. And we will also talk about comparing VeriSM with the ITL4. So I'm also ITL4 Foundation certified, and I, as Namrata has mentioned, am VeriSM Foundation Plus Professional certified as well. And subsequently, we'll talk about what it takes us to reach to this VeriSM qualification, and then in the end we will have Q&A. So now let's talk about this beast, which is like digital transformation. So everyone nowadays, or if I remember correctly, from last almost 8 to 10 years, people have been talking about digital transformation. And when I was first got introduced to this, the best thing which came into my mind was Salesforce, because Salesforce is one of the organizations which have transformed the way in which your CRM system works. So I'm presenting a quote from Mark Benoff, who is the chairman and co-CEO of Salesforce. So he always say that every digital transformation have to begin and end with the customer in mind. And that's always the talk of the town, right? So whenever I've been interacting with any kind of CIOs or CEO, I always find digital transformation as a key buzzword. So as you currently see that for any kind of transformation, whether it's a digital transformation, whether it's an organization level change, at the end of the day, what matters is the value which you are creating it for customer. So the center stage of any kind of change have to be aimed at the customer. So if you are not able to satisfy the customer needs and requirements, the changes which you are bringing, it will not be of any worth. Yeah. So fundamental point is focus should be on the customer or the end user, and specifically in VeriSM we call all of them as consumers. So I thought of formally defining what digital transformation is, and then how we take it ahead, right? So these are the few definitions which I picked it. So it's all about creating new values. It's all about using digital technologies. It's all about creating better customer experience with the changing market and business needs. Yeah. So there are key pointers over here. So digital technology is one part of it, but then that is not all of it. Yeah. So you need to have focus on change, you need to have focus on processes, you need to have focus on people, because it is always tough to bring any kind of change. It's easy to bring technological change, but then it's tough to bring change related to any people or process and culture. So for doing any kind of digital transformation, you need to have a digital leadership clearly established so that individuals can focus on bringing the transformation. And it has been proven in recent survey that almost 60 to 70% of digital transformation fails, and the reason is the lack of digital leadership. And over a period of time, the priority changes. Over a period of time, the focus changes. So the intent is overall rigor needs to be maintained, and it needs to be come from top down for ensuring the digital transformation is successful. There's another quote and definition provided by George Westman. So he's a MIT principal researcher and scientist. So he's clearly saying that you need to radically rethink how organizations work, and you need to bring changes based on technology, people, and processes. So with that, that is a fundamental understanding of digital transformation. So people also say that there are two ways by which you can do digital transformation. First is digital disruption, and second can be digital optimization. So let me give you an example of digital disruption. So organizations like Uber, organizations like Airbnb, Ola, or Swiggy, or Zomato. So these are the people who have done the disruption in the whole business process. They have set up new set of platforms. They have created new customer base. They have changed the business model of organizations. So these are the examples of digital disruption. So in case of digital disruption, you change the whole business process substantially, and you use technology as a tool to guide you through. So that's digital disruption. So digital optimization is the next level. So once you have established a digital disruption, there would be competitors who will be catching up with you. So you need to keep yourself abreast, you need to optimize yourself, you need to ensure that you are working on the gains which you have initially got through this digital disruption. So digital optimization helps you to get this across. So focus of digital optimization is on continuous service improvement through innovative methods, bringing the process optimization, bringing other aspects as well. So that's a vicious cycle. So you need to focus on disruption and then optimization, and once optimization is complete, you need to again disrupt it so that you bring new things in the market. Yeah. So broadly speaking, digital transformation comprises of disruption plus optimization. So this slide talks about the recent organizations which are called digital organizations. So if you see, all these organizations were not there 20 or 30 years back. So let's assume you are in 1990s. You've not heard about Google at that time. You not have heard about Airbnb. You not have heard about TripAdvisors. So all these organizations which are there, most of them are recently born in say last 20 or 25 or 30 years. So these are the organizations which have given run for money for earlier Fortune 500 companies. So if you see now the latest Fortune 500 list of organizations, there are hardly few companies which are there which were there in the old, right? So most of these are now replaced by these digital organizations which have recently come up. So initially you used to find General Motors, General Electrics. For sure, these are the truly great company, no doubt about it. But then companies like Google, companies like Apple, companies like Amazon, they are there, in top 5 or top 10 when it comes to overall Fortune 500 ranking. So digital is here, and digital will last and will be there in future as well. So now let's talk about why this change is happening. What is the basic phenomena why this is happening? So why people are now focusing on everything as a service? So for that, if we want to go deeper, you need to understand what has changed in the last 30 years. So now we are sitting in 2020. So if we take our focus back to 1990s, so in 1990, the overall population of world was close to 5.2 billion. So that was the population of world. And now when you sit in 2020, population of world in March 2020 was 7.8 billion people. So in last 30 years, we have added almost 2.6 billion people on this earth. So that is equal to combined population of India and China. So if you see in last 30 years, demographics, the whole demographic landscape have changed across the world. And these people who have born in last 30 years, they are either called, say, Generation Y or Millennials or Generation Z, which is called digital natives. So these people are now getting employed. These people are now the people who are driving the change. These people are the people who are now comprising 70% of your employee strength. So with this mindset, with this new generation coming in, they are bringing a consumer mindset, so which is more focused on consuming things rather than owning any kind of assets. The intent is we want to use the services, we are okay to pay for the services. I don't want to own any car, I don't want to own anything which is asset high, because I want to use and consume those things. Tomorrow if my need changes, I can easily switch on to the next set of activities, I can easily switch on to the next set of consumption pattern. So that's a consumer mindset which is now shifting, and we can see that happening from last 20 to 25 years. If you see at the organization level, right now, I'll show the recent example which has happened with me. So I was preparing the budget for my BU, and then we have been given very clear indication that our focus should be more on the OPEX budget rather than CAPEX. So organizations are trying to transform themselves. They are trying to change their spending patterns. They want to focus more now on operational cost rather than CAPEX, because with CAPEX in place, you need to have a liability to pay every time. With OPEX, you can always switch on and off the cost based on your requirement, based on the overall profitability of the organization. So fundamental shifts are happening at individual level as well as at organization level. So also, as I mentioned previously, organizations used to last for generations. So as I gave an example of, say, General Electric, General Motors, or companies like IBM, they are as old as 100 years. So organizations were meant to last long. But then if you see the recent digital set of organization, the average age of organization is close to 10 to 15 years. So if you see Google was started in 1998. So average age is say 20-22 years. So now these set of organizations are there, which is as old as single generation. So now people are more interested in focusing on consuming products or services, or rather than solutions, which is easily available, which is bringing them convenience and bringing the overall experience. So as I mentioned, focus is now changing, and people are more interested in that how value is getting created in terms of overall experience and how the convenience is brought onto the customer. So now let's talk about VeriSM. Like, let's talk about how VeriSM is relevant in this overall context of digital transformation and this changing world. So if you see, this is a basic fundamental slide. On your right side, you can see there is a consumer who provides you the demand, and there is a supplier, or there is a service provider who is providing the supply of that demand. So if you see, the value is actually getting created through the transaction which is happening between the consumer and the service provider. So when you say uh, consumer provides a requirement, consumer say that this is my need. So when you say the needs can be explicit needs as well as the implicit needs. So requirements are being provided, and then service providers, they do the investment in terms of having those capability built for developing those products and services, and then they supply those services in terms of providing the service provision. So the services are being provided, and then both the service provider and consumer see what is the overall ROI, return on investment, on the money or the value which is generated. So a fundamental point is this relationship will only last when both these two parties consider that the relationship is building or resulting into a value. And the biggest challenge over here is value changes over a period of time, or rather I must say value diminishes over a period of time. So let's assume you are there in, say, again 2000, so, or in 90s. So if you buy a car, you used to think that having AC in a car is the biggest asset, and you will only like to have AC or auto, or auto functions, or for the car. But then now, when you are now buying a car, let's take an example of Tesla. So you are buying a piece of technology which should upgrade by itself. You are buying a piece of software which should upgrade by itself. So the car no longer is now, just a AC or else. It's more of a technology, how convenience is provided through that. So over a period of time, if you see in 1990s or 2000, value used to be considered in a different way, but then now in 2020, value is perceived in a different way. So as I mentioned, VeriSM focus on basically the outcome based approach rather than the output based approach. Let me give an example for that. So let's assume that you are there at your home, you are ordering a pizza. So you have opened an app, say Pizza Hut app, and you have done an online order. So the transaction has happened. So in this case, the output is you getting a pizza within, say, 30 minutes, which is promised by X organization or Y organization. So that is the output of getting the pizza delivered at your doorstep. The outcome in this case is you getting a quality time, you able to spend a quality time with your family and enjoying the pizza. So Verism basically focus on the outcome rather than the output. So it goes one level deeper to focus more on the value which is created in the whole ecosystem. Also, as I mentioned, it's driven by inside out approach rather than outside in. So what it means, like, most of the transactions which are happening, right? So it has to be driven through the consumer need rather than the organizational need. So if your services or products or your solutions are not designed based on the requirement of consumer, then you are not adding any value. Also, as I mentioned, the transaction which is happening, service transaction which is happening, or service provisioning which is happening, has to have the consumer at the heart of the transaction. So now let's talk about VeriSM. So VeriSM is more of an acronym when V stands for value, and as I mentioned, value diminishes over a period of time until unless you are bringing or adding new features or functionalities in the product or services which are getting delivered. E stands for evolving. Obviously, the transactions which you are having with your customer or consumer needs to evolve. There are requirements which are changing, so you need to provision your services, you need to have your products created based on that evolving or changing needs. Responsive, as I mentioned, so in the subsequent slides I will talk about management mesh, which is more of a tailored approach, which is more of a responsive approach. So if anything changes, VeriSM helps you to cater to that change by changing your fundamental things in management mesh. And I is integrated. So what it says that your requirements needs to tightly integrate with the kind of products or services which you are delivering across. And S stands for service, M for management. So that's in nutshell where is the acronym all about. And as I mentioned, this is more of a mindset and approach which helps you to move from uh, current operating model to target operating model. So it's a way of moving from COM to TOM. So COM stands for current operating model and TOM stands for targeting operating model. So it always helps you to stay ahead of the curve. It helps you to build a flexible operating model to which needs or which meets the changing business requirement. Having said that, Verism also say and speak that whenever we are talking about service management, it's not only a responsibility of IT, it's not only a responsibility of any specific department, it is a responsibility of everyone in the organization. So initially we used to have a concept that the customer service man see CRM team, it's only responsibility of CRM team to think about service improvement or to think about customer. But then now with verism mindset, it's a responsibility. Service management is job role, and it's part and parcel of every person who is there in organization. So it always say that you need to understand the requirements of customer. You need to establish service management at enterprise level, and organization need to come out of this siloed approach rather than treating organization into functions or department. You need to consider them as bundle of capabilities who can deliver value to the customer. As I see it over here, Verism also focus on creating T-shaped professional rather than I-shaped professional. So let me give you my example itself. So I was say, I having say 14 or 15 years of experience. I initially had 8 to 10 years in SAP. So that was a deep insight or deep knowledge which I have it for SAP. Then subsequently, I thought of diversifying myself, working in different departments, say vendor management, asset management, service delivery management, working with HR, working with, business, working with customers, so that I diversified myself. So I transformed myself from I-shaped professional to T-shaped professionals. So Verism focus more on T-shaped professionals rather than I-shaped professionals. So now let's talk about the service management principle. Let's talk about service management principle. So service management principles, they actually act as a guardrail. So when any organization or when any service provider organization, they think that they want to produce any product or service, they need to be abided by certain frameworks. They need to be abided by certain principles. So service management principles are those guardrails wherein you produce your products or service based on the limitation or uh, mm, based on the inputs provided through service management principles. So what comprises of service management principle? It can be the quality metrics, it can be the risk, your compliances, your overall fundamental policies which are defined at organization level. So these are the basic points which are part of your service management principles, and they define the boundaries for creation of your product and services. So now let's talk about this VeriSM model, what it is all about. So if you see the VeriSM model, you have consumer on both sides. So you have consumer who is providing you the requirement, and you have consumer who is verifying, reviewing, and improving, suggesting improvements. once you deliver them the product or services. So you have consumer on both sides. So you have to think VeriSM model as three concentric plates. So you have an outer plate which comprises of governance. So governance is basically the high level mission, vision, policies, or the overall goal which organization set up. So those fundamental principles are driven through governance, and it is always a top-down approach. So governance is overall overarching everything in an organization, and as I mentioned, service management principles, they are the guardrails for defining the boundaries of your products and services. And the most important aspect, the most important critical aspect in this model is your management mesh. So we will talk in detail about management mesh, but then I'll say this is one of the most important tool which VeriSM has uniquely designed and defined, which gives you flexibility to tailor your requirements, to help you understand what is changing and how you have to transform yourself. So as I was saying, digital transformation is all about change. Your management mesh helps you to bring that change effectively in your organization. And again, there are few set of activities which are defined, such as define, produce, provide, and respond. So in the define stage, a person needs to work on designing the solution based on the requirement which he received from the consumer. So that's about the define stage of the VeriSM model. So in produce, it's actually the stage where you develop your solution. So you create, you do a build, test, deploy, and you create the complete solution, which is or you design your services based on the requirements which are provided in the earlier stage. So the output of define stage is your blueprint. The blueprint is then fed to the produce stage, and the overall product or services get developed in the produce stage. In the provide state, if there's any kind of new changes, if there's any change requirements, changes which is now being suggested by customers, so those get fed in through the provide stage, and then you again go back to define and produce. So it's more of an iterative cycle. So if there are any kind of service changes which are happening or which is suggested by consumer, that get fed back to define, produce, and then to provide. And in response state, you actually focus on post delivery issues. So if there are any specific bug fix, if there are any kind of P1 P2 tickets, if there's any kind of post delivery support, service management support, so that is addressed through the respond stage of VeriSM model. So now let's focus a bit on the management mesh. And as I mentioned, management mesh is the most powerful uh, aspect of a VeriSM model. So management mesh is defined by a kind of square which have four sides, and you need to read it from clockwise, starting from environment to resources to emerging technologies and management practices. So under environment, it have different frameworks such as SWOT analysis, pastel analysis. If there is any kind of legislation changes which are there, you need to think about your competitors. You need to think about your organizational culture. You need to think about organizational behavior. So all these parts, all these things are defined under the environment uh, part of the management mesh. So there is a strand called others in each and every aspect. So under environments also you can see others, under resources, under emerging technologies and management practices as well. So this other strand helps you to define your principles based on your need of organization. So suppose, let's assume that you are working in an organization where it's a kind of monopoly kind of environment. So you will have to focus on certain other things, right? So that input can be fed in the other strand. Yeah. So as I mentioned, under environment you have processes, matrices, tools which acts as a service stabilizers. So now let's move on to the resources. So under resources, it actually talks about all and every kind of resources which are there within the organization or outside the organization. So there can be two sets of things, right? You have internal resources, which includes the resources within the boundary of organizations, such as people, tools, assets, budget, so on and so forth. So these are the resources from the perspective of internal. There are resources uh, external to organization, which are, say, if you have vendors, if you have third-party suppliers, if you have some strategic partners. So all these are resources which can be external to the organization. And then you can have resources defined as asset can be your one of your resource, time can be your one of the resource, knowledge can be other resource. So you can define based on your requirement what you want to build your management mesh across. The next important aspect is your emerging technology. So emerging technologies helps you to pick up the right set of technologies which are prevailing at that time. So if you if you see uh, if you need big data, if you need blockchain, if you need AI, you need deep learning, you need ML, so you will define all those things under the emerging technology, and you can pick and choose how your organization is faring, what is required, what needs to be developed, what needs to be procured from outside. So as mentioned, it also have others as a strength. So if there are few legacy things, right? Suppose let's assume you are an organization who have not handled any kind of transformation and you are running your systems which are as old as 20 or 30 years, you can define those technologies under others, because these are considered as legacy systems. So you can put that under other strength. Yeah. Now, the next important side is management practices. So management practice helps you to pick the best management practice available for your industry. So let's assume that you are a financial institute, you are a bank. So SOX is one of the important requirement if you're operating out of America. So you can choose SOX as one of the management practice. Suppose you are a healthcare service industry, or if you are a healthcare company, HIPAA is one of the requirement which is needed, to be compliant with. So you can choose HIPAA as one of the management practice. So if you are a service provider, IT service provider, ITIL V3, ITIL 4, these can be used as a management practice. Corporate can be one of the management practice. If you are engineering firm, you can choose CMM level 5. If you are a consulting firm focus on people, you can use PCMM level 5 as those management practice. Even ISO practices, ISO standards can be used as a management practice. SIAM, DevOps, Agile, Lean, project and portfolio management, and others. Based on the requirement you have, you can define those management practices, and then you can certainly use them. So how you have to use the management mesh is the most critical and the most powerful. So whenever you are working on any kind of requirement, whenever you are working on creating management mesh, you have to first focus on the current state. So you have to see these four dimension of organization, how these four dimension are currently placed. So based on that, you will create the current state of management mesh. So once you create the current state of management mesh, then you need to understand where you want to reach. So let's assume that you are a company who want to go to cloud, who want to bring transformation by getting rid of your data center. You want to move across to cloud. So in that case, you need to first create your uh, current view of management mesh. You need to map how good you are in terms of your emerging technology which is there on cloud. So suppose if you rate, say, 2 or 3, which is relatively low on your current state, and now you want to reach to 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, so that would be the future state. So you need to map your current state, and then you need to focus on your future, where you want to reach to, and then you find the delta. So delta helps you to begin your journey, to help you transform yourself or your organization to the next level, which is called digital transformation, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So that's how why we say management mesh is very powerful, because it helps you to tailor your requirement. It helps you to pick and choose the practices which are required. It helps you to transform yourself in terms of aligning your requirements as per the business needs. It helps you to pick the right set of tools and resources and technologies so that you can develop your services and product accordingly. So now let's talk about comparing say VeriSM and ITIL 4. So again, so this is my view, and I'm sure most of you, since you have now spent almost uh, 30 to 35 minutes, you will also agree on that. So VeriSM was one of the framework, which came into existence somewhere in 2017. So VeriSM was developed, or it's a mindset. It's not rather framework. It's a mindset or an approach which was owned by IFDC. So IFDC stands for International Foundation for Digital Competency. So they are the so it's a non-profit organization which is owning this model, or this approach. So they are the pioneers for VeriSM, and uh, if you see the history, there were almost 70 plus lead contributors across the world, from different part of world, from India, from US, from Netherlands, from Bulgaria. So all those people came across, and they came up with the need for creating this framework. So VeriSM came into existence somewhere in December 2017, and so there are organizations like APMG, Action, BCS. These people combined together, and then they formally rolled it out. So certainly, Verism have an early moves advantage, because the last service management framework which we were using, and that was specifically for IT, was in 2010, which was ITL v3, which was limited, only focusing on IT. But then Verism came up with more of an umbrella approach, wherein the focus was more of building, the concept of service management at enterprise level, and focusing on using different kind of tools, technology, methods, and resources based on your requirement. That's about Verism. If you talk about ITL4, yes, certainly it's a good framework. It's a good tool for bringing the changes in IT landscape. So it was launched in 2019, and there are different modules of ITL4 now getting developed, and now getting slowly rolled out. So if someone asks me, like, is Verism enemy of ITIL4, or it's enemy of DevOps or Agile? I'll say no, it's not. So Verism is more of a umbrella framework and a umbrella approach, wherein it respects your investments which you have done in past, and helps you to focus on future. So it embraces the future, and it respects your past, and you can be rest assured that all your earlier investments in any kind of service management tools can be safe, whether it is ITL, DevOps, Agile, Lean, Kanban, or whatsoever. So with that, I just tried doing the comparison between Verism and ITL4, so you can always compare Verism with other frameworks as well. Yeah. So now let's talk about Verism qualifications. So I'll hand it over to Namrata.
All right. Thank you so much, Atul, for the wonderful insights and taking through the journey of VeriSM. I'm sure everyone else also would have found the presentation knowledgeable as well. So, talking about the VeriSM qualifications, well, they are into different levels. VeriSM Essentials is the lowest of all levels. It offers an understanding the basic of service management principles. The VeriSM Plus is more of a bridge exam which looks at progressive practices and focuses on the impact of innovative technologies on modern service management. Then comes the foundation, which is a combination of essentials and plus, but that focuses more on the VeriSM model, emphasizing the organization's goal and outcome. VeriSM Professional is an advanced level, and that tests a candidate's knowledge in applying VeriSM in an organization. Well, just to mention, one who has any existing service management foundation certificate, they directly can take the path of VeriSM by applying for VeriSM Plus, and they get certified VeriSM Foundation by clearing VeriSM Plus. I shall be more than happy to provide you more details on these modules as on request. Now, going forward to the career path certification. Um, yeah, so it is Certified Digital Transformation Officer is one of the career path certification out of 9 career path other certifications into various competencies. Well, this is designed for professionals to work towards a role or set of skills. So we have an option to choose if we go what this DTO is based on in the next slide. So this is a module-based career path certification, and basically this is designed to, like I was mentioned, to work towards a role and set of skills. So it's a combination of various certification, and we have 7 options, and from that anyone can choose 4 skill sets, and as a combination they can achieve DTO certification. So with that, VeriSM Professional is mandate, and one can choose Cloud Computing Foundation or from XAAS or CCC, and then there is Big Data, IoT, Artificial Intelligence, and Blockchain. So any 2 of these 4 would suffice for someone to get DTO certified. With that, like I was mentioning in the early of this webinar, like Atul is one of the first one to in India to receive DTO badge, and I would like to take this opportunity to ask him about his experience, like what DTO has added as a value to his existing experience and career. Atul, would you like to share your experience on this?
Yes, thanks a lot. Thank you, Namrata, for asking this question. And I'll certainly say that, yes, first and foremost is I feel more honored and more confident when you said that, I'm one of the first one in India to get this badge. And the most important thing is, you need to be very clear where you want to build your career path. So if you want to ensure that you are part of this digital transformation, you want to move up the service management ladder, you need to bring changes in your organization, and you want to transform your career from being a manager to being a leader, you certainly need to focus on it, right? The reason I'm saying is because when I was preparing and when I was focusing for this, I was thinking it from 360-degree perspective. So I was not only talking about technology. I was not thinking about only using those niche technologies, but then I was also thinking that how we can do the changes in organization in terms of the culture, overall organization culture. So how you can bring OCM, organization change management, or OBM, organization behavior management, in organization. So it gives me a perspective. It helps me to appreciate each and everything, whether it's the technology, whether it's a soft aspects. So when I clear this, I have done a VeriSM Foundation plus VeriSM Professional. I was one of the reviewer of the book for blockchain, which was released by Van Haren. So I cleared the blockchain certification, and then I also cleared cloud, because cloud was one of the mandate, and it was part and parcel of my day in and day out job. So I did my cloud certification, and then I was also keen in clearing the artificial intelligence, because that was the area of interest for me, and that's how I explored it. So certainly it helps me to enhance my career path. It helps me to broaden my horizon. It helps me to appreciate the world more from again outside in view rather than inside out, right? So that helps me to get a different perspective rather than just only focusing about organization, just only focusing about being professional in the role which you are playing. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much, Atul. So we have questions coming in, and the first question is from Mr. Jiva. He asked that ITL 4 came in 2019, but ITL V3 is there for a decade, as you said. In the past, ITL processes was applied in IT industry. However, it is capable for any industry and domain. Can you list maybe three, four difference?
Yeah, correct. So that's a good question, and as I mentioned earlier, right? Uh, so the difference between VeriSM and ITL is, so when you say ITL v3, right? So you had incident management, change management, problem management. Those were the different modules which were there, right? So you have service design, service strategy, service operations, so on and so forth. So those things were there. So that was more of a perspective, when you are talking about IT service management. But then Verism is more than IT service management. It is a service management tool, or it's a service management mindset or approach for any kind of industry. So as I mentioned, let's assume that you are a healthcare industry. You are an organization who is into financial sector. So for you, ITL might not be the best practice because ITL focus more on the IT side of requirement. But then Verism certainly yes, because you have a concept of management mesh. You can you can tailor your requirements, or you can tailor your tools, or the overall management practices which you need, your resources, the technology which you need, and it helps you to be more uh, imbibed, in total, rather than focusing only on the IT side of it. Certainly, I'll say ITIL is a good framework only meant for IT side of services, but then Verism is more of an umbrella approach, which see or which gives your perspective from 360 degree. Yeah, so that's my take on Verism. And then I have already mentioned that if any organization, if they have already implemented ITL v3, they can continue to use ITL v3. So see, Verism as an approach is there, so no one is forcing you to use it. It's just that if your business is changing, if your landscape is changing, if your systems are changing, then ITL 3 or might not be the latest for you, right? So you need to revisit your organization from the perspective that how your customers are changing, and what set of things needs to change to meet those needs from the service or from product perspective. Yeah.
So, with that related, there is a question again coming from Jiva that are you saying ITL is not supporting for digital world when compared with various?
So I'm not saying that it's not supporting digital world, but then the thing is, it lacks the agility at which, or it lacks the pace at which the change is happening. So let's assume that your rate and pace of change is at X rate, and ITL is still more, not tuned in a manner to adhere to the changes which is happening, in the overall world. So ITL 3 was at least not, and with ITL 4 coming into picture, they are still trying to bring those digital competencies they are trying to embrace, but then still it's a long way ahead. Yeah, and I'll say that as we see that Verism have few, or rather there are multiple case studies wherein, like, organizations have implemented it. And so you can always go to verism.global website. There are tons of material you can explore. There are various case studies we can refer, wherein organizations have done digital transformation based on the tools, or based on the kind of frameworks which are available in Verism, and overall umbrella approach. Yeah.
I cannot be more agreed on this. You are absolutely right. So we move on to the next question. It is Mr. Pranav asking that can you please explain more on I shape and pi shape professional?
So I and T-shape professional is okay. So I was expecting this question. So I-shape professional is a person who is focusing completely on a single domain, who is focusing on a single technology. So let's assume that I am a person who was working on mainframes, and I spend my 15 or 20 years only learning mainframes. And if I don't diversify myself, then it become an obsolete thing for me. So I say professionals should always focus on diversifying themselves in terms of doing a continuous learning, and learning different technologies, learning different or learning from the different departments. So say a person who is a mainframe expert, I respect that, but then suppose if that technology become obsolete, then you are at risk of getting your skills obsolete as well. But then if you are a T-shape professional, so in T-shape, so let's assume you have an experience of say 5 to 6 years in mainframes, and then you diversified yourself into say service management, to vendor management, to say asset management, or to say other competencies of your organization, then you are more saved because you are more immune to the changes which is now happening and which is very frequent. Yeah. So the intent is, if a person diversify himself with the way of continuous learning in his life, then he can be equipped, or he can be more protected to handle the changes happening through digital transformation. Yeah.
Right. So the next question is, how do you define VSM as evolutionary approach or a revolutionary approach?
So I'll say that it's it is certainly a evolutionary approach, not a revolutionary, because whenever you have to apply verism, you need to take a baby steps. You cannot change everything at one go. You certainly need to think first that, okay, I want to first get a buy-in from my management, from the leadership team, and once you have that, you target that I will start using these frameworks. I'll start using the management mesh for transforming X set of customer requirements, and then subsequently I'll change the culture. I'll use some of the tools which are verified or which are specified in verism to transform my organization. So it is certainly a evolutionary approach which can bring revolution in organization and in companies in long term. Yeah.
Right. There is a follow-up question again on the ITIL thing. So the question is, can you list some reference company who have implemented VeriSM and probably who moved from ITIL practice, and what was the benefit? Well, I can answer the first part of it. There are a lot of companies. I think HCL, HP, they have really been implementing VeriSM, and there are a lot of European companies as well. I think I'll leave, however, Atul to answer this in a
Yeah.
better way.
Good. So if you Google across, right, there are multiple companies who have used Verism as a framework. The second question, which was like, leaving ITL. So no one is saying that you leave your ITL, investment which you have done. So people or Verism says that, whatsoever stay relevant for you. If ITL is relevant for you, you stay with that. If tomorrow, your organization decides to bring in a new competency, then say ITL might not be relevant at that point in time. So verism focus always on the changing landscape, changing requirement, changing need. So if you are in a setup wherein things are not changing and ITL is working for you, then you can better stick to that. But then fundamental point is, now with the whole ecosystem changing, with the whole dynamics changing, you need to be adaptive to the requirements which are changed by customer. So it's not that you need to get rid of ITL, but then it's more of a coexistence approach, wherein you pick the best from a practice, and if there's some delta which needs to be picked up from other management practice, you pick that as well. So every one or every management practice can live in coexistence, provided they are adding value to the customer based on the requirements which they have provided.
Right. So there is a related question to this. Can VeriSM coexist with other service management framework?
Correct. So that's I tried answering implicitly. I was not knowing that this question is anyhow coming, but then yeah, certainly yes. So it as I mentioned, like it embraces future, and it helps you to think about the past, the investments which you have done. So all these frameworks which are there can coexist. It's not only ITIL, Corbett, or ISO, or whether it's a CMM, CMMI, or PCMMI, SIAM, or DevOps, or Agile. All those things can stay and coexist along with VeriSM, because it is more of an umbrella approach. It picks the best which is required and stay relevant at that point in time.
Right. There is a again related question. Is it really necessary to learn five different approach, which looks like only creating chaos, like ITL, VeriSM, COBIT, IT for IT, SIAM? Would you like to throw some light on this? That is it really necessary to have all this?
So again, so you have rightly pointed, right? So there's no magic tool. The magic tool is things are changing, you need to be adapted to that. And verism is an approach, as I mentioned. It's a mindset saying that, when things are changing, you should be agile, you should be the first one to sense that change, and then you should be changing yourself in terms of changing based on the requirement. So certainly I'll say that you need not to go for each and everything. You need not to focus on each and everything. What's our suit best for you? What's our suit best in the requirement? So hence I always say it is more of a tailored approach, right? So it can fit for a organization which is a kind of startup. It can it can fit for an organization which is, say, established multinationals having, say, employees more than 20 to 30,000. So it is a tailored approach. So you need to understand that what is required for me, what is required for my customer, what is required for my consumer. And then if Corbett is the only thing which is required, I think you better do with that, right? So the fundamental point is you need to be always be proactive rather than reactive to the changing needs which are there. So that's a basic message which I want to convey over here. Yeah.
Right. The next question is, well, I think this is more for me. Why, in case of DTO, few courses were Exin AI and others are CCC IoT? What is the difference between them? I mean, Exin and CCC. So, if I understand correct to your question, well, you are asking why there are Exin courses and CCC. Well, CCC is another certifying body called Cloud Credential Council. They are more into cloud modules, professional cloud modules like service manager, security manager, and so on. And they also do have big data and IoT. The reason being, when I say CCC IoT, basically those programs are owned by them and are being provided by Exen. But then we don't own IoT. We have it is their syllabus, it is their design that we follow. However, AI, when I speak, it is Exin and BCS. It is BCS is another exam institute. We have co-developed AI. Blockchain, it is again solely of Exin. So we have developed with numerous experts in the world. So for that reason, I mentioned as both the certifying bodies, that is Exin and CCC, but it is available with Exin as a whole. And we have given options out of four, whether it is AI and blockchain or big data and IoT, however it suits to your profile and however you are implementing in your organizations in these areas. You can choose any two out of these, and one from cloud and VeriSM professional being mandated to get a DTO certified. I hope I have cleared your point. Well, there are certain other questions also. We go to the next one. Um, okay, I see a lot of questions. Why VeriSM should be studied with Exen? Okay, so there is a question again from the audience. Why VeriSM should be studied with Exin, not with APMG or BCS? Well, I can also take this up. VeriSM is a product which was co-developed with 70 other experts, and they have been mentioned in our VeriSM book. We have developed this product starting and we actually released this product starting 2018, and this is pretty much available with BCS and other exam institutes. So it's not like studying with Exin or studying with APMG or BCS. The program remains the same whoever develops it. So for that reason, you can choose Exin as your exam institute partner, or you can choose BCS or any other as you mentioned. So there will be no difference as such. So looking at the time constant, I think I'll take up all the rest of the questions and put across to Mr. Atul, or maybe the later point of time, and then we reply you back over an email with the questions that you have. So, but then thank you so much for attending and joining us today. And I will provide also, or we will provide a link to this webinar for future reference. And also I would be glad to announce that Consult Desk, our partner for today, so they have certain offers which will be mentioned in the email after this, and you can have registrations or questions more on it. Please give us the feedback. And yeah, before leaving the room, I would say stay safe, stay home, and stay healthy. Thank you so much everyone for attending. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Namrata. Thanks everyone, and yeah, stay home, stay safe. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye bye.